thank you all for joining us for another Annual Awards of Excellence interview. My name is Richard Larkin. I am the General Manager of the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts, and it's great to see you all here. As some of you may know, the Annual Awards of Excellence is an award for kitchen, pastry and service professionals aged between 20 and 26. And what we're doing is interviewing people who have won this in the past and seeing where it's taken them and get an idea of how it's affected their career. So today, we're going to be speaking to Sam Ward. But before we do that, I'm just going to introduce you to our category chairman in the different three categories. So first of all, with pastry, our chairman are Yolandi Stanley, MCA, who I see is here. Welcome, Yolandi, good to see you. And Sarah Hartnett, who I think has not made it today. Then at service, we've got John Cousins, who I believe is here. There you are. And Sergio Recci, again, great to see you here. In the kitchen, Martin Nail and Harold Jones, I believe, are hard at work as well at the moment, and they have not been able to make it. But those are the people that are the chairman in each category and are making the calls. So the Annual Awards of Excellence Lockdown Awards have been a little different this year, of course, with the limitations we've had. They're now closed, and we look forward to announcing the winners on the 7th of July, once we've considered all of the impressive entries in each category. So more of that to follow. At this point, I'd like to thank our wonderful and generous sponsors, without whom none of this would be possible. So first of all, Act Clean, and then Berkman Wine Cellars, Maple from Canada, Champagne Laurent Perrier, Malden Sea Salt, the Savoy Educational Trust, of course, Woods Food Service, WPA Healthcare, the caterer and the staff canteen, who have all been helping us in this endeavour. So as ever, each one of you do use the chat feature to ask any questions, and we'll go through them at the end. So if you've got anything that you want to ask, fire away on the chat and we'll address that right at the end. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Sam Ward, the Annual Award of Excellence 2011 Young Waiter of the Year. Now, Sam won the title whilst working at the Ritz in London. However, having grown up in the Lakes and having previously worked at L'Enclume as a bar manager, he went straight back to work for Simon Rogan as the maitre d', moving up the ranks. He now runs an 8-strong restaurant business in the Lake District in London and Hong Kong. So quite a story and quite a journey, I think you'll agree. I thought I'd start off by asking what drove you to enter the Annual Awards of Excellence in the first place? What sort of put you on that road?
Well, thank you for such a wonderful introduction to begin with. At the time, I was working at the Ritz Hotel, and I sort of, a very short backstory, I worked in all sorts of places. And actually, before I worked there, I wasn't at L'Enclume, I was at Rogan & Co., which is our bistro, as the bar manager there. And when I went to work at L'Enclume, Rogan & Co., I sort of thought I knew everything, and I was a bartender, and bartenders are notoriously cocky and should stay that way, quite frankly. But my sort of training was mostly sort of self-taught. And then when I went down to London and somehow got a job at the Ritz, gosh knows why they took me on, they took all of these rough skills and just started teaching me and gave me the gift of knowledge and showcasing the way things should be done, and gave me standards and raised my bar so highly. And naturally at the Ritz, to showcase that at a competitive level was kind of part and parcel of working there. So for me, I'd seen all these amazing waiters, and I specifically remember a waiter coming through one morning, and everyone was sort of clapping him into the restaurant and going, well, and I was quite new to the world of fine dining and the Ritz. And he's called Rosario Capello, and he came in, and everyone's sort of going, wow, well done. And he'd entered the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts Annual Awards of Excellence, and he'd won one of the awards. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. I want that level of respect. That's incredible. So which I said, why are they clapping? And he turned around and went, well, if you don't know, there's a serious problem. And so he that was my first kind of hook. I was like, I've got to do this. I've got to be a part of whatever this is. I have to be a part. And then over the sort of months and years to come, I realized that it was much more than just a clapping occasion. It really meant something.
Yeah, it's quite a process. And what was your experience of the awards? I mean, particularly, we touched on it before when we were talking before this, but in terms of preparation, and what was your training like?
So what we said earlier, just briefly before we came on the screen, was if I hadn't have won any of the awards, I still would have come out a winner, because the process of sort of training yourself and disciplining yourself and knowing you're going up against the best in the industry, to be able to sort of hold court in a room with those people, you've got to put a shift in. You've got to prepare yourself. If everybody could do it, you wouldn't get an award, right? So, my days off, I was going to places to learn more. I didn't really like cheese. I'm terribly sorry to everyone out there. So I went and was working in cheese shops on my days off, and I didn't know much about cigars, and I didn't know the question that rocked up. So I was walking into, the sort of Davidoff and Churchill shops and asking, could you teach me on my days off? And the great thing about this industry is people are so happy to share their knowledge. So for a few days a month of my time, people would teach me, and I would work in shops for free, and that was a lot of my preparation. And the other thing was, I was a sommelier at the time, so I kind of had a bit of a leg up on some of the wine portions of the competition, but I very much a leg down on the other sides. So I was working extra shifts in the Ritz just to say, if someone orders a Dover sole, can I be the guy who goes over and carves it? And so the preparation definitely made me a stronger member of front of house, and the rest was a bonus. And
so given that you'd not competed in this way before, how did you cope with the competition format and the pressure on the day?
Blind ignorance. That was absolutely how I coped with it. Just don't even think about it. But also genuinely don't enter something as prestigious and as wonderful and as life-changing, which I'm sure we'll talk about, without preparation. Like prepare. When you get to the point where you know that you know the answers to some questions, or you know how to serve a certain type of service or do a Dover sole, don't carve 5 Dover soles and walk into a competition against the best in the country. Save up some money and buy some, or ask your boss if he'll buy a few Dover soles in for you, or do it until it's like breathing, so that when you're there on the day, it is just robotic and muscle memory kicks in, so that you can still showcase to the judges that you can do it, and you can talk, and you can be hospitable. Because, as I'm very privileged to be on this call with some of the best in the industry here. They'll tell you it's great to be able to carve and put the food down, but you've got to charm your guests, you've got to look after them, you've got to care about them. And so the rest you need to be able to do by breathing. So prepare, don't go in half cocked.
So after all of this process, how did it feel when you found out that you were the highest scorer?
Very unexpected, genuinely completely unexpected. I very much enjoyed the process, and at a young age, being able to go, 27, being able to go into Claridge's, my awards dinner, and sit there in a bow tie, and then just feeling pretty classy all round. And John Williams was actually announcing the awards, who was my executive chef at the time. And I remember he went up, and at no point had I considered that I may have won this. I was looking at all the other wonderful competitors. And then John, and I will never ever forget this, John was getting to the point where he was about to announce, and just half a second before he announced, he turned his head and he winked. And I went, no. And the feeling, it's still with me right now. And I got the award, and by that it was a bit of a blur shortly after that, if I'm honest. Sort of went on stage and stood there going, wow, okay. And that whole night was just, I'll never forget the bits that I can remember. So it was magical.
And although you'd worked another place before the Ritz, you beat it to where you are now, effectively. Did you? I mean, presumably you hadn't met such a broad section of people in the industry. So it must have been great for sort of networking and just finding out about the industry beyond the places you'd worked.
Hugely. And I think one thing that the Academy is very good at is it's a support network. Nobody wants you to fail. If they could give an award to every single person that walked through the door, they would do. They want everybody to be a high standard. It's not always the case, but the support network that I've received, and the people over the years that I've been able to pick up a phone and call if I have a problem, there's nobody on on this call right now. If I called them and said, look, I'm really struggling with something, could you give me some advice? Happily. So not only from your peers, but also the future leaders of the industry as well. You look at the people that you compete with and see where they're going to be in 5 years, and you might be walking into their venue, or they might be walking into yours. So the networking capabilities, don't underestimate. You might be cheeky chef de rongs at the time when you're running around these competitions, but the people next to you may be running a hotel in Macau or a private yacht out in the Maldives. So it really is I don't think you quite realize, what is it they say, you don't know you're in the good old days until later on. Well, that's what they are.
And then kind of leading on from that, where has this taken you? What things have you done to develop since winning that thing? Just talk us through your career to give an idea of where you started from there, where are you now, and what have you done in between?
Well, I think the first thing it did was it gives some real kind of credibility. Doesn't come much more credible than, you know, having won a competition with the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts. And that also is an international credibility. Even if someone, you know, if you went into the Congo and wanted a job, they might not necessarily know every association, but they know a few of those words, and that's going to give you some credence. So for me, it gave me confidence as well. It gave me huge confidence, not cockiness, but just, okay, well, if these guys believe in me, then I'm going to keep pushing forwards. So since leaving the Ritz, which I left I'm still great friends with a lot of the guys there. My gran wasn't well, and she's up in the lakes, and she wasn't well 11 years ago, and she's still painting ceilings and things now. So I moved back up here. Simon offered me a job as maitre d' of Lonclume, and that was in 2012. It was an amazing opportunity, and he was someone that really invests in people, and he gives people the opportunity to grow. So I'm very, very grateful to him for the opportunities there. So I spent a few years as maitre d' of Lonclume, and then when I started overseeing a couple of the other sites, I went to operations manager, and then we started expanding, and I moved to operations director, and so I opened restaurants in London and Hong Kong, and last January was made managing director and partner of the group, of the global group. And then a global pandemic kicked in March, and it was time to prove that you should have that job. So yeah, it's been a very interesting time, and it's been a tough time. I've cried and bled and sweat over the last year, but I've got an amazing team, and we've got through it. So I'm very lucky.
Yeah, it's a heck of a journey, really. And going back to the award itself, and one of the things you get as well as the huge kudos of winning it from amongst your peers and so on is the overseas trips and a few other elements that came with it in order to advance your education and broaden your outlook and so on, and to continue to educate. And so for those that don't know, the three highest scorers, and so in each of the categories, 1, 2, 3, we have they're sent on an educational trip abroad, courtesy of our sponsors. So in this case, the Savoy Educational Trust. So Sam, as far as my notes say, you went to the fabled cellars of Champagne Mum and also to visit Alain Ducasse in Paris. It's a pretty good gig.
The thing is very difficult to get across if you're entering or thinking about entering the Annual Awards of Excellence. Don't look at this as, you know, a flight or a free train or a free meal. It's so much more than that. The doors that you get, they don't open doors for you. They remove walls and give you sort of center court at places that you would never hope to get. So it's not just, you don't go to Mum and taste a glass of champagne. Anyone can pay 15 euros and do that. You sit in Maison Cordon Rouge and you taste some of the finest wines over dinner with, I think that, I can't remember the gentleman's name now, but I think that he has 2 days a year to allocate towards the British market, and one evening of that he allocated towards us. And then you're taken out and to eat in the Windmill and Verzenay. It's just unbelievable, the level of care. Because when they find, when they find out you're walking in somewhere with, Sarah Jane Staines or Adam Bayard or, Silvano Gialdini, if you're walking through the door with these people, you're royalty, and you get to be a part of that for a moment. And I'm sure that was something that I was not expecting. So we ate in World's 50 Best Restaurants. We ate in private dining. It was quite special, and I'll never forget it.
Well, you'd already been a sommelier. So how did you find the further education on the champagne making process? And obviously, did that help you when you got back? I imagine it did.
Absolutely, because you learn and you study, and it's great, and you should take your WSETs. It's a great program, but it's not the same as going there and okay, right, yeah, disgorgement, I understand this now, right, this makes sense. To be able to be taken there and see the processes and have someone talk you through it and be able to go, I'm not exactly sure about that, can you tell me a bit more, and then lift the bottles and tell you about riddling. It's very different, and it's a huge privilege. So it then pushes your knowledge further, and you end up becoming addicted to wanting to know more. So you can hardly get me out of champagne now.
And presumably you took back a certain amount of inspiration from both the Mum visit and also the Ducasse visit.
Yeah, the Ducasse was something else. It really was, and you look at the price of those meals, that we would never be able to have afforded those. And I think they made it a custom taster menu for us. Of course, we had the Plaza d'Athénée. It was prior to the refurb they've had. And so I was lucky enough to see that. And I also remember the maitre d'. Remember the maitre d' there? And he convinced me by the time I left that I was his best friend. And I realized that's a maitre d'. That is, and it was a real privilege. Yeah, the rum bars came out at the end. It was the full whack. Yeah, I think we did something ridiculous. The amount of stars we did over a very short period of time was unbelievable.
Interestingly, how did that contrast with your trip across to Mexico?
Less sombreros. So in Mexico, we decided to try to blend in by buying sombreros, and it turned out it didn't work. But we had a great time, and to have sort of close time with Sarah was a real privilege, and you know, to be able to get to know her a small amount, and she's a wonderful woman. I'm very lucky for that. So it was a different experience. It was probably a little bit less formal. I don't know whether they're always that way, but it became a very, very sort of joyous affair amongst us all. And
going with Martin, presumably going in with Martin, you were able to spend some time looking inside the kitchen as well.
I mean, mayors came out from towns to meet us. It wasn't just, you know, the restaurant. We were treated like, you know, absolute royalty everywhere we went. And so you had an insider view on the street food, which is insane over there, the way they use a very small set amount of ingredients and create a variety of dishes. And then we were going into developing chefs' kitchens and seeing things that people weren't seeing, and eating in Pujol and Bicot, both on the 50 Best at that time. I don't think Bicot is anymore, but Pujol was. It was, yeah. And then you take that forward. So, you know, the years afterwards, I was a maitre d'. I had experiences, real, quite high-end experiences that I could never have had to talk to my guests about. And then they have more respect for me and more credibility for me. So it just drove my career forwards.
And I guess you also found you'd found synergies with your hosts and with Martin and Sarah Jane, but also with your fellow winners.
Yeah. We got on a bit too well, if I'm honest. It was from start to finish. It was fantastic. And actually, Stefan, who won the pastry, couldn't make it in the end, and so somebody else took his place, Jack, and Dimitri as well. We still keep in touch with Dimitri. It was yeah. We all cared. We were all passionate, and so there was kind of two halves to the trip. There was the genuinely learning and coming away from it with a wealth of knowledge. And then the other side, which was just a lot of fun. We just had so much fun. And I could have never afforded the trip. I mean, a lot of the experiences you can't buy. You can't pay for the things that you do on these trips. You have to be connected with someone like the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts. And so, yeah, just privilege is the right word.
And when we talk about the hospitality, their approach there, compared to that in France, one thing you've pointed out is sort of slightly less formal approach. Any other things that sort of jump out?
I think it was very unfamiliar territory. So when we were in France, for example, and eating in the restaurants, you know, there's people in London sort of emulating, you know, the Gavroche emulating the sort of style of food, and so you feel a connection to it. But in Mexico, it's very, very new, very, very raw. So you're seeing tamales stands where they're selling tamales for 20p, and you're going, well, there's a queue at that one and not at that one, so I'll go to that one, and so there was this very unfamiliar territory. We also decided to try to habilitate ourselves to be able to eat spicy food by eating the spiciest thing we could every day, which caused a lot of problems for the first few days, but then we were kind of able to do it. We probably drank a bit too much mezcal. We went to Casa Lacanda, which I will go back to one day when I've got the money to be able to enjoy it properly. And Casa Lacanda was in Merida. The gentleman that ran it, I'm fairly confident Scarface was based on him. It's a silk shirt with one button here and big medallion, and it took us into his private sort of home really, and showcased his mezcal bar to us. You can't book a ticket for that. It was unbelievable.
And I was going to ask, how do you encourage candidates to enter the annual Awards of Excellence, you know, in-house or to a wider audience? I think, you know, probably by recounting some of the things you said just now, I think.
It's just a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer to enter this competition. You will not lose out. There's no, you're either going to gain experience for the next time you enter, or you're going to gain experience in being in a competition, or you're going to meet some friends, or you're going to win, or you're going to travel, or you're going to get noticed by some of the best in the business. There's not a single reason not to do this if you care about your career.
Yeah, I mean, actually, well, the point you made very early on is even if you don't progress to be the final, one of the final three winners, the amount of knowledge you'll accumulate by preparing and by researching and preparing for that time is going to be extremely valuable.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I learned the importance of, you know, so some of the people on this call, I remember sort of being decanting wine in front of, you know, some of the absolute best, and thinking, if I can hold my own here, you know, if I can hold my own in front of these guys, because you can't pull the wool over their eyes. Like they know the tricks. So you've got to be on the ball. No, it's for me, you've got to give this a go 100%. And I remember as well do you know something I remember about the night of winning the awards, and I will never forget this. I came off stage, and this was a beautiful lesson to learn. I came off stage having just photos and celebrity chefs, and John Cousins walked up to me. And I don't know if you remember this, John, but you walked up to me and you said, "A maitre d' is never caught with his hands in his pockets." And I had my hands in my pockets. and I was told off the moment I got off stage. But he's completely right. And it was that moment of sort of remembering, hey, look, this is great, but standards are standards, you know. And for me, that's something that I try to employ with my team. There's no room for ego, or no matter how far you go, you never get away from sticking to the standards and doing a great job. And I thank John immensely for that.
Well, given the other thing I wanted to touch on is that given that you tried the different cuisine and so on in Mexico and the different approaches there, the Annual Award of Excellence, we focus on classical styles of cookery and service. You know, there are other choices out there, but why do you feel this one's so important to learn and to keep alive, the classical style?
Well, they don't die. I think this is where people get a bit confused with the classical rules of service. Service can adapt and change, but the principles of classic service, they never change. And you can, so for example, we've got this isn't a blatant plug, we've got a restaurant up in Windermere and called Henrock, and probably the least formal of our entire group of restaurants around the world now is the bar and lounge there. It's a beautiful bar overlooking the lake, and we've introduced Gueridon service there. For me, it's really important that the front of house get the opportunity to work with Gueridon service, because you can showcase your skills, you can showcase your confidence, you can build a great rapport with your guests. Now, you know, we're not doing a Canard à la Presse because it just wouldn't work there. But we have our own farm that we grow our own produce, and we take the produce there on a daily basis, and we have a setup on the trolley there, and we build a salad for our guests in front of them, overlooking the lake, drinking a glass of champagne. Let me know if you need a reservation. It's those rules, those principles never go away. So I think it's important to keep them alive. Now, potentially in modern day gastronomy, there's a time to stick to them to the letter, and there's a time to take principles and adapt them in what you do. But fundamentally, and then of course, everything else, what John said, the hands in the pockets, the way you look someone in the eye and greet them properly. I mean, Silvano's just captivating with that. You know, he walks in a room behind you and you know he's there. It's, you know, those rules never change. And whether you're running a bar, a pub, a 5-star hotel, they can't die.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if anyone's got any further questions to us, because I've got a couple here, but they can still send them by chat. So while we're here, do that. I was going to ask. Oh, who's that?
Hi, it's Sergio.
Oh, hey Sergio, shoot.
I'd like to ask Sam a question. Sam, I've enjoyed listening to you tremendously, and congratulations on your achievements so far. You, I'm sure, are an inspiration to young people who want to join the industry. You've done so well in the 10 years since you won your competition, and so well deserved. I have two questions for you. One is how did you manage to keep your team together during the pandemic and the close down? It's been such a challenging time for our industry. And number two, now that we've reopened, everybody is quite experiencing a shortage of staff in their establishments. We know that there's so much great talent in the UK, and you are definitely a living example of it. How do we encourage this and bring forward this talent? How do we get these people to take up our industry? What are your suggestions how would you go about it?
Well, thank you very much. And they're the two pretty biggest questions I think our industry should be sort of looking at right now. The first question that you asked about keeping the team together, for me, you know, people genuinely are the most important thing, and family, they're family, right? Like a true restaurant should be a family. And we, pre the sort of first lockdown, that sort of March 16th to March 21st week, had about 125 members of our team in the Northwest. And this is just our case study. I'm not saying this is applicable for everyone. We didn't make any redundancies. Simon and I stopped paying ourselves, and we the management team took big pay cuts, and then the team that went management didn't really get affected as much. And then of course furlough kicked in, and that kind of leveled things out a little bit. The first lockdown wasn't too much of a trouble for us, if I'm honest. We're in the Lake District, it's beautiful up here. And so people were out in the sun. We started a community effort. We started making, so I won't quote the price of the bills at Loncloon, but they're quite high, as you can imagine. But we moved to £5 meals. So £5 meals that we were sending to anyone that bought them, and that provided more meals for the local hospital. And so that created a community effort to keep us going. And then, you know, we reopened. So that sort of saw us through. And by that point, we'd opened up a takeaway system, if you will. They're not really called takeaways. You send them to people's homes, but someone called it a makeaway the other day. I don't know how I feel about that, but there you go. So then we did the summer. Second lockdown came, and we had a good summer, a strong summer. So we paid our entire team in full through the second lockdown in November. And we kept doing more of these Simon Rogan at homes, kept people busy. And these two weren't the challenging ones. The third lockdown, this was the tough one. It was darker, the days were shorter, you know, mental awareness is, you got to be aware of it, because I think the trouble is, especially to those more resilient, we're not as aware of it. If you're resilient to stress and to change, you're not quite as aware that not everybody will be. So we started doing a masterclass every night for our team. And so first one was Simon, second one was another chef. We sent food out to everyone's homes and we all cooked along together. Then a whiskey tasting, cocktail tasting. So every night people had stuff in their homes that we'd sent out, and we came together as a bit of a community. And I tell you what, it saved me a few nights. You know, there were some pretty dark days in that sort of quarter, and I was looking forward to these masterclasses. So that was essentially how we got through as a team. As a business, it was very much based on diversifying into the at-home kind of range, which has now got permanent residents, a new kitchen. We've taken a 1,700 square foot space that's ours that we've kitted out, and we're now continuing forwards to do that with a few new corporate contracts. So that's a good thing that's come out of that. So that's how we kept together. Communicate. I think that was the biggest thing I learned over the last year. Talk to your team. Always keep talking to your team. Don't go quiet. So that was how we did that. As far as the staffing shortages at the moment go, I think it really showcases the fragility of our industry. You know, to be honest with you, that's the first thing. The fact that often the success of our industry is built on the personal sacrifice. I'm being raw and honest now. The success of our industry is built on the personal sacrifice of those people that work in it. And a lot of those people have said, no more. It's the industry that must wake up. And we're seeing these winds of change now. There's huge winds of change. And, you know, we moved Loncloon to a 4-day week about 5 years ago. And that had a great big effect on morale. And although it cost a little more, everyone's just doing so much more. So eventually you need less members in your team because everyone's trained and there with you for a long time. I think it's up to us as an industry to look after each other as much as we possibly can. You know, staff retention's the way forwards. You know, look after the staff, train the staff, treat the staff. I think a lot of the establishments we're a part of and talk about, we do that. But generally in the industry, we've all heard the stories of, you know, hire a staff, next day they're in, leave them in the back, working out yourself. That's not a life. You know, we should care and consider the people that work for us even more than the guests that walk through the door, and we're very good at that. So I think just, you know, we just need to rethink a little bit about how we care about the people in our industry. And the biggest issue we probably have is I've done 16-hour days, and I have worn them as a badge of honor. I've done a 36-hour straight twice. I maybe need to stop doing that. That's not cool. That's not a great thing. It's not. But a great thing is having a team that have worked sensible hours for a sensible amount of time on good pay and are passionate about their job. Yeah, that's a badge of honor. Yeah. So that's what I'm aiming towards. That's what we're you know, we don't always get there. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're absolutely perfect. We're not, but we need to recognize that and keep trying to sort of reach for it. So it's going to be tough though. it's not going to be an easy ride, I think, over the next few months. But I think if we sit there stubbornly, not willing to change, that's where the problems are going to come from.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Does anyone else have any further questions? I'm quite curious to know how the transition went from one restaurant to what, eight restaurants now, I think, and then going off to Hong Kong as well. How did that all plan as your career grew?
I'd love to tell you it was really, really well planned out and organized. But the truth is, we just sort of hit the ground running in Hong Kong. We went over to Hong Kong and saw that there was a really good market for what we did over there. We did some pop-ups and people well received it. And so we've always done the same thing with expansion. Build the team internally and then grow when you've got good people, rather than kind of do it from the office and go, do you know what, like this business model means we could open another venue, let's hire some people for it. So all of our restaurants, so Hong Kong, in Organic Hong Kong, in Henrock, Rogan & Co, all of those restaurants are managed front and back by people that have trained through the ranks at Long Clue. So the culture's alive of everything we do. We don't have to train it through a book or anything like that. So I think that's, for me, the biggest thing. And we've actually got some really exciting things about to happen over the next few months. And that's, again, all organic growth. So I think for me, my business model is, and I couldn't open 50 restaurants like this, but my business model is, again, look after the team, work as a sort of a close family and let them grow. And if you give them room to grow, they'll do great things. So that's how we've gone from managing one. As far as keeping myself sane goes, I think trust people. Don't micromanage them. Don't employ great. It's actually somebody who works for me called Pierre Brunelli. He's a master sommelier. He's an incredible man. He taught me a phrase in a sentence. I'm not going to try and take credit for it. Don't employ great people to tell them what to do all day. And it's so true, and sometimes they're going to get it wrong or slightly different, but give people room to grow and drive things forwards, and then you'll have a really nice organic path. So that's been our way of doing it. And Simon's at the helm for that. He's very much somebody that wants people to progress and grow forward. He doesn't want it all just his way. He's a big believer in there's lots of brains here, let's use them.
And how are conditions in Hong Kong at the moment?
I think they've been sensationalized a little bit. It's actually hunky-dory. It closed for one day over the last year and a half, and it's busy. The problem was we had riots before the pandemic over there, and you hear riot in the UK and you think really bad. I've walked through riots in Hong Kong. They're not as bad as people think because it's peaceful generally. So it wasn't as drastically affecting everything. Had some pretty interesting reports come through from the restaurant, the daily reports. So I had to close service for an hour, tear gas in the lobby, everything resumed, that sort of thing. But actually, it's been pretty strong out there. The economy's good. They seriously locked the borders down. So internally, Hong Kong's working very, very strong, just not really as part of an international effort. There's still a 3-week quarantine. If I want to go over there now, I have to spend 3 weeks in quarantine. I could have 17 vaccinations. It doesn't make a difference.
Well, it's a fascinating insight because, of course, mostly we're sort of concentrated around the UK. So it's good to hear that. Has anyone else got any other further questions you want to ask? Don't hang back on any account. Okay. Well, look, Sam, I'm sure I certainly very much appreciated your time, and I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as we all did.
I mean, it's a real honour and a privilege to get any sort of FaceTime with the people on this call. So thank you very much for having me and for the support that I've received over the years. It's meant a lot.
Well, thanks very much for taking time.
Well done, Sam.
Sam.
Thank you, Savannah.
Richard?
Yes, Richard.
Yes, Richard. Could I ask Sam one question? Does Simon have a backer?
No. So a lot of the reasons why I think people, certainly in our company, have a huge respect for him is he started, washing pots in a Greek fish and chip shop essentially, and he built this empire on a loan from a bank many years ago. And so Simon and his wife started the business and then brought me into the fold. I mean, when I say brought me into the fold, if you walked into an entire restaurant, I own one glass. It's nothing. Let's not get carried away here. But it's just us. Yeah. And then the great thing about that is we don't need to, from a business point of view, we don't need to provide 20% returns back to the backers. We can reinvest that money all the time. And so in our plan over the next few years is to, with all the extracurricular things we're doing, just keep reinvesting.
And are your premises all leasehold or freehold?
A bit of a mixture, so that we own some, we rent some, so it depends on the premises. I'd say of the properties that we work with in Cartmel, we own half of them and lease half of them. And the arrangements we've got in the hotels, as we don't own the hotels, it's sort of a different arrangement in there. And Hong Kong is essentially a managed franchise. That's probably the best way to describe it. I mean, I would happily discuss it at much greater length with you, Richard. It would be a pleasure.
Well, I don't want to impose too much.
No, this is the other thing. I'm at the stage now where, speaking to people like yourself, it offers, more learning opportunity for me.
Well, well done for keeping your head above water.
Thank you very much. I'm putting a smile on it, but it's been very tough. And I'm very grateful to the team because I've had to lean on them a few times as well.
Well, great to hear, and I look forward to hearing more about it as we come out of the whole pandemic.
Well, I think the idea as well was as we a masterclass a little further down the line, and when we discussed the idea of doing a masterclass, I was a little unsure because I'm not in service day to day at the moment. I'm in because I like to be in, not because I'm there all the time. So I didn't think I was necessarily going to be the absolute best person to sort of come on a screen and show someone how to do something practical. But one thing that I'm really passionate about is developing your career in the right way and making careful, considered decisions to do that. And there's lots of people on this call that could give a masterclass in that, but I thought as soon as I've got a little bit of time to do it, that's what I do. Just try to make sure people realize that this is a career. You can change your life and you can go very far with it. So that's what I'm going to do my masterclass in.
Yeah, very valuable stuff. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Forward to that.
Sorry, Sergio.
I look forward to it, Sam.
I think you're okay, if I'm honest with you. I don't think you're going to need this advice.
But I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, then I think we'll just say a big thank you, and we look forward to the masterclass. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well done,
Thank
Sam.
you, Sam.